Right now, somewhere in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a man is feeding horses before the sun comes up. He has no smartphone, no tractor, no electric light in his barn, and he is part of one of the fastest growing populations in the entire United States. Over 400,000 Amish people are living across 32 states right now. That number has more than doubled since the year 2000. And here is the part that stops people cold when they hear it. These communities are expanding at a rate of roughly one new settlement every 10 days. Every 10 days. That is not a typo. That is not a misread statistic. New Amish communities are forming faster than most American neighborhoods can get a new coffee shop approved by the city council. And they are doing it without the internet, without government subsidies, without corporate farming contracts, and without a single tractor engine running in their fields. Now, before you think this is some story about people stuck in the past, here is what will completely change your mind. The average Amish farm is 40 acres. The average conventional American farm is 444 acres. And yet, when researchers actually go out and dig into the soil on both types of farms and crunch the numbers on profit margins, labor hours, and long-term land health, the Amish are quietly winning in ways that most agricultural economists did not see coming. The biggest dairy farming state in America? You might guess California or Wisconsin. But nearly a third of all dairy farms in the United States are Amish-run. A third. People who do not plug into the electrical grid are quietly holding up a massive chunk of American dairy production. And they are not just surviving out there. They are thriving and growing and buying more land year after year, outpacing their conventional farming neighbors in property transactions in county after county across multiple states. Something is working. Something is working extremely well. And understanding what that thing is will completely change the way you think about efficiency, community, and what it actually means to build something that lasts. We are going to walk through exactly how they do it. Not just the farming part, but the whole system. Because the farming is honestly the easy part to explain. The harder part, the part that really blows your mind, is the invisible structure holding it all together. But first, let us start at 4:30 in the morning, because that is when this whole thing begins. Before we go any further, if you find yourself wanting to share this with someone you know, that is exactly why this channel exists. We dig into stories that sound impossible but are completely real, told in a way that actually makes sense. If that sounds like something you want more of, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We put out a new video every week, and next week we are getting into something you have not heard framed this way before. Now, back to the barn. Section 1, A Day in the Fields. The alarm clock does not go off at 4:30 because there is no alarm clock. The Amish farmer wakes up because his body has done this 10,000 times before, and his muscles remember what his mind barely has to think about. He pulls on his clothes in the dark, walks across a yard that is completely silent except for insects, and pushes open the barn door. Inside, 6 horses are waiting. These are not small animals. A Belgian or Percheron draft horse stands over 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighs somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds. When you stand next to one of these animals, you feel it in your chest. They are built like living machines, all chest and shoulder and calm, slow breathing. Each horse can pull about 150 pounds of resistance hour after hour without stopping. Now hitch 4 of them together in what farmers call a team, and you suddenly have a force that can drag a 3-bottom plow through heavy clay soil from the moment the sun rises to the moment it sets. A 3-bottom plow means 3 blades cutting through the ground side by side, turning over about 18 inches of soil with every pass. The team walks slowly, maybe 3 miles per hour, but they walk all day. And a good team on good ground can cover 2 to 3 acres between sunrise and sunset. Now, here is where every person who has ever heard about modern farming raises their hand and says, "But a tractor can do 100 acres before lunch." And that is true. A modern row crop tractor humming along at full throttle can cover ground in a way that makes horse farming look like watching paint dry. But that comparison completely misses the point of what the Amish are doing. They are not in a race. They are playing a different game with different rules and a completely different definition of winning. We will get to that. But first, let us follow the morning through. By 6:30 a.m., the horses have been fed and watered, the cows have been milked, and breakfast is on the table. Amish breakfasts are not small affairs. We are talking eggs, meat, bread, vegetables, and coffee, all of it produced or preserved from the farm itself whenever possible. The whole family eats together, every morning, without exception. After breakfast, the fieldwork starts in earnest. In the spring, that means plowing. The farmer harnesses the team with a practiced efficiency that looks almost choreographed. Each horse knows its place. The straps and buckles click into position. The farmer takes his place behind the plow handles, clicks his tongue, and the team moves forward. There is no cab with climate control, no radio playing country music, no GPS screen telling him where to go. Just the sound of hooves hitting packed earth, the smell of turned soil, and the rhythm of the work itself. One Ohio Amish farmer said something that stuck with me when I read it. He said they could farm more acres if they switched to tractors, but then they would need headlights to work past dark, and they would spend less time eating dinner with their children, so they farm what the horses can handle, and they stop when the daylight runs out. Read that twice. That is not a man who is behind the times. That is a man who has made a very clear and very deliberate decision about what he values and what he does not. The day moves through its sections like a well-worn routine, plowing in the morning hours, a break at midday for the horses to rest and the family to eat lunch together, then afternoon tasks that shift with the calendar. May means moving livestock to summer pasture. June means a second planting of corn for fall harvest. July is the month that makes everyone sweat because hay cutting, threshing, berry picking, and honey harvesting are all happening at the same time across the same 40 acres. August means the silos start filling up with grain and everyone can feel the turn toward autumn. By evening, the horses are back in the barn, the cows are milked again, the children finish their chores, and the family sits down to dinner before the sun is fully gone. 7 days a week. 52 weeks a year, with Sundays off for church and rest. Now here is the question that every person outside the Amish community eventually asks: is this sustainable? Not in a philosophical sense, but in a hard, practical, show-me-the-numbers sense. Can you actually run a family farm with horses and hand tools in the 21st century and come out ahead? The answer, when you look at the actual research, is more than yes. It is yes in a way that should be deeply embarrassing for a lot of conventional farming assumptions. Section 2. The soil science they stumbled into. Here is something that takes conventional agricultural scientists completely off guard when they first see it. When researchers from universities in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana started comparing soil samples from Amish farms against neighboring conventional farms, they kept finding the same thing. The Amish soil was healthier, not a little healthier, noticeably, measurably, significantly healthier. Higher organic matter, better water retention, more biological activity underground. The kind of soil that grows things easily, holds moisture through dry spells, and keeps getting better instead of slowly wearing out. And the Amish farmers did not set out to create this outcome. They did not read a soil science paper or attend a regenerative agriculture conference. They just kept doing what their fathers and grandfathers did, and the soil responded. To understand why, you have to understand what heavy machinery does to ground over time. A modern row crop tractor can weigh anywhere from 20,000 to over 50,000 pounds when you add the equipment it is pulling. Now imagine rolling that weight across the same field over and over, year after year, season after season. The soil does not just get pressed down temporarily, it gets compacted at a structural level. The spaces between soil particles, the tiny air pockets that roots need to push through, that water needs to travel through, that worms need to move through, those spaces collapse, and once they collapse under enough repeated pressure, they do not come back easily. This is called compaction, and it is one of the most underreported problems in American agriculture right now. A conventional farmer in Ohio sold a piece of land to an Amish family. Before the sale, that farmer had never been able to get a good alfalfa crop from that ground. He tried multiple times over multiple years. The alfalfa would sprout, struggle, and fail. He assumed the ground just was not right for alfalfa. The Amish family planted alfalfa in their first rotation on that same ground. They got a strong crop. Same field, same seeds, different result. The difference was that the horses, which weigh a fraction of what a tractor weighs and distribute that weight on 4 soft hooves instead of 2 giant rubber tires, had not compacted the soil any further. And with 1 season of rest and root growth, the alfalfa was able to push down into layers that had been crushed shut under decades of tractor traffic. The horses fixed what the tractors broke simply by being lighter. Now multiply that across every field, every season, every farm in an Amish community, and you start to see why their land tends to get more productive over time instead of less. The crop rotation they use adds another layer to this. It is not complicated, but it is smart. About 15 acres of small grains like oats or wheat, around 20 acres of alfalfa hay for animal feed, and 15 acres of corn. The rotation cycles through these in a pattern that lets each crop restore something the previous one used up. Alfalfa, for example, is what farmers call a nitrogen fixer. It pulls nitrogen from the air and deposits it in the soil through its root system. When you till alfalfa under and plant corn behind it, the corn has a natural fertilizer waiting for it underground. No purchased fertilizer required. The rotation does the work. Researchers at Ohio State ran the numbers on this system. The total labor required to run a 40-acre Amish farm through an entire year comes out to around 920 hours. That is roughly 23 full 40-hour work weeks spread across spring, summer, and fall. The winter months are lighter, focused on equipment maintenance, woodworking, and preparation. Now compare that to a conventional operation growing just 1,000 acres of corn. That operation requires around 3,600 hours of labor per year, and it almost always needs hired help on top of the family to get through planting and harvest. The Amish do not hire help. The family is the entire labor force. And because the farm is sized for what a family can actually manage with horses and hand tools, the numbers stay inside a range that makes sense without borrowing enormous amounts of money to buy equipment that depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot. Speaking of equipment, this is where the financial picture starts to look truly wild. Section 3. The economy that runs without credit cards. A single modern combine harvester costs over $500,000. That is not a joke or an exaggeration. A fully loaded combine from one of the major manufacturers can run $500,000 to $600,000 and more. And it needs to be replaced, repaired, or significantly updated every 10 to 15 years. In the meantime, you are paying for diesel fuel, replacement parts manufactured by companies that know you have no alternative supplier, and a dealer service department that charges accordingly. The total equipment cost on a typical Amish farm, the plows, the harrows, the manure spreaders, the hay baler, the seeder, all of it combined, comes to roughly $24,000. The annual operating cost for all of that equipment runs just over $2,000 per year. Let that sit for a second. $24,000 for the entire equipment inventory of a working family farm. $2,000 a year to keep all of it running. How is that possible? A few reasons. First, most of the equipment was bought at auction or traded between Amish families. There is a thriving second-hand market for horse-drawn implements inside Amish communities, and because the equipment is mechanical rather than electronic, it does not become obsolete. A hay rake from 1970 works exactly as well as a hay rake from 1950. There are no software updates required. There are no proprietary computer systems that void the warranty if you try to fix them yourself. Second, there is an entire small industry of Amish-run shops that manufacture replacement parts for horse-drawn equipment. These shops keep alive the supply chain for implements that the rest of American agriculture abandoned in the 1950 seconds. If a plow blade breaks, you do not call a dealer 2 counties away and wait 3 weeks for a part to ship. You drive your wagon to the shop down the road and come back with what you need. Third, the Amish fix things themselves. From the time they are children, Amish boys and girls are taught to maintain the equipment around them. By the time a young man is farming on his own, he can rebuild a harness, repair a cultivator, resharpen a plow blade, and get a bulky piece of equipment running again without calling anyone. That skill set is essentially free labor applied to an asset that already cost almost nothing. The horses themselves are part of this economic picture too. Yes, horses require feed, care, and veterinary attention, but they also reproduce. A well-managed draft horse team produces foals that can be trained and used on the farm or sold to other farmers. Horses do not depreciate like machinery. A well-cared-for Belgian mare can work productively for 15 to 20 years. And here is the part that really reshapes how you think about Amish economics. The horses also produce manure. Enormous quantities of manure. And that manure goes back into the fields every year as fertilizer, closing the nutrient loop that keeps purchased fertilizer costs near zero. The conventional farm down the road is paying for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in bags and liquids sprayed from a tank. The Amish farm is cycling those same nutrients through the livestock and back into the ground, over and over, year after year, for free. Add in the fact that Amish families do not pay for health insurance through a private company, do not collect or rely on Social Security, do not apply for farm subsidies, and do not carry the kind of debt load that forces conventional farmers to scale up constantly just to service their loans, and the financial picture starts making a lot more sense. This is not poverty. This is a completely different economic logic built on the idea that the best way to have money is to not need it in the first place. But none of this, not the soil health, not the equipment savings, not the crop rotation, none of it would work at the scale the Amish operate at without the thing that actually makes the whole system possible. And that thing is so simple it almost sounds fake. Section 4, the real secret is the people. On a Tuesday morning in late April, a family in Indiana woke up to find their barn had burned down overnight. No animals were lost, but the structure was gone. The building where they stored their equipment, kept their horses, and ran a significant portion of their daily farm operations was a pile of ash and scorched lumber. By Friday, a new barn was standing in its place. Not a temporary shelter, not a patched-together fix. A full barn, framed, roofed, and ready for livestock, built in less than a week by people who showed up without being asked, worked without being paid, and left without expecting anything except that someday, if they needed it, those same hands would show up for them. A barn raising is the most visible version of something that runs through every part of Amish life. The community is the infrastructure. When a conventional farmer in rural Ohio has a crisis, the options are limited. Maybe farm insurance covers some of it. Maybe a federal disaster relief program has a relevant fund. Maybe the bank will refinance the loan. These are all systems that exist somewhere outside the community, managed by people who do not know your name or your family, operated by institutions that respond slowly and with paperwork. When an Amish farmer has a crisis, 150 people show up before the week is out. The Amish operate a system called mutual aid that is older than the country they live in. It traces back to their origins in 17th century Switzerland and Germany, when they were a persecuted minority who had to take care of each other because no outside institution was going to do it for them. That necessity became a habit. That habit became a value. That value became the structure of their entire society. Every church district, which is a group of about 25 to 35 families that worship together, functions like a small, tight-knit insurance company. When someone gets sick, the community covers the bills. When crops fail, the church fund covers the family's needs until the next season. When a young couple is ready to start their own farm, the community helps them get the land, the tools, and the animals they need to begin. No interest, no application, no credit check, just people taking care of people. And it is not just emergencies. The mutual aid shows up in everyday life too. Harvest time brings neighbors out to help with each other's fields when the timing lines up. Quilting bees are not just a tradition. They are a way for women to gather, talk, make something useful together, and reinforce the social bonds that make the whole community work. Barn raisings, road repairs, building projects of all kinds happen through coordinated group effort rather than individual expense. What this creates is something that economists call social capital, though the Amish would never use that term. It is the accumulated trust, goodwill, and reciprocal obligation that a community builds up over generations of actually showing up for each other. And it turns out that social capital is worth an extraordinary amount of money in practical terms when you never have to calculate it. Think about what the Amish do not pay for that a conventional farmer does. No health insurance premiums, no retirement account management fees, no labor costs during busy seasons, no contractor markup when building a structure, no interest on debt borrowed to cover emergency expenses, no therapy bill from the stress of working completely alone on a financial tightrope with no one to catch you. All of those costs are replaced by a web of relationships that have been carefully maintained for generations. And maintaining those relationships is itself part of the work. It is considered as important as milking the cows or planting the corn. Now here is where the growth comes in, because this community model does not just sustain itself, it multiplies. The Amish retain roughly 85% of their young people into the church. 85%. In a country where most religious traditions struggle to hold on to their young adults, where social institutions of all kinds are watching their membership age and shrink, the Amish are holding on to the vast majority of the next generation. And those young people get married, and they have children, many children. The average Amish family has between 6 and 8 kids. That is not a guess. It is a documented average across multiple studies and census analyses. And because 85% of those kids stay, the population doubles roughly every 20 years. Every doubling means more families. More families means more farms. More farms means more land needed. And land in Lancaster County has gotten expensive because Lancaster County has been discovered by the rest of Pennsylvania. Suburbs push out, development pressures rise, prices go up, so the Amish do something smart and simple. They move. New Amish settlements are forming at a rate of about 1 every 10 days. Montana, Colorado, Maine, Missouri, states where farmland is cheaper, where the land can support a family, where there is room for a community to grow without being priced out in a generation. They scout land together. Families agree to move as a group rather than as individuals because the community does not function with just one family in it. They need the critical mass of neighbors to make the mutual aid system work. In Lancaster County alone, Amish families hold title to nearly 110,000 acres of farmland. They are actively buying more every year, and they are winning more auctions than they are losing. When a conventional farm goes up for sale, there is often an Amish buyer ready with cash because Amish families carry less debt and are not waiting on financing to come through. This expansion is sometimes described from the outside as a kind of quiet march across the American landscape, and that is not a wrong way to see it. But from the inside, it is simply families doing what families do when they run out of room. They find more room. They bring their neighbors with them. They start again. And each new settlement begins the same way the original ones did, with a group of families, a shared understanding of what they value and what they do not, some horses, some hand tools, and the willingness to show up for each other before anyone has to ask. Section 5. What everyone else is missing. The American conventional farm has been getting bigger for 70 years. Every decade, the average farm size goes up. Every decade, the number of farms goes down. Farms consolidate. Small operations get absorbed by larger ones. The large ones take on more debt to buy more land, more equipment, more inputs, to grow more acres of commodity crops that they sell at prices set by global markets they cannot control. This model has produced extraordinary amounts of food. It is genuinely efficient in the narrow sense of producing a lot of calories per acre per hour of direct labor. but it has also produced something else, a farming population that is under enormous financial stress, farms that are deeply dependent on purchased inputs and borrowed money, and soil that is, in many cases, getting measurably worse every decade. The average conventional farmer in America is 57 years old. The industry has a serious problem with attracting young people because the entry cost is now so high that a young person without inherited land or generational wealth has almost no path into farming. A new entrant would need to borrow millions of dollars before they plant a single seed. The math does not work unless everything goes perfectly for decades. The average Amish farmer is younger. And when an Amish young man is ready to farm on his own, the community helps him get started. Not with a loan from a bank at market interest rates, with actual support, land, animals, tools, labor, and knowledge passed from people who have done it before and are invested in seeing him succeed. The barrier to entry is still real, but it is not a wall built of borrowed money and compounding interest. It is a threshold supported by the hands of the people around you. Now, I am not saying every American should give up their smartphone and start raising draft horses. That is not the point, and it is not a realistic takeaway. The Amish system works because of a very specific set of values and social structures that took generations to build and are not something you can replicate by choosing different farming equipment. But there are things in the Amish model that the rest of us are slowly and painfully rediscovering. Soil health matters in ways we are only beginning to measure. The right size for a farm is not always the biggest possible size. Debt is a vulnerability, not just a tool. The people around you are infrastructure. These are not new insights. They are very old ones. The Amish never forgot them. And while the conventional agricultural world is pouring billions of dollars into precision farming technology, GPS-guided equipment, and soil sensors that upload data to cloud platforms, the Amish farmer in Lancaster County is walking behind his horses on land his grandfather bought, and the soil under his feet is getting better every year. There is one more thing worth mentioning because it comes up every time someone writes about the Amish. The question of whether their lifestyle is a choice or a constraint. The Amish have a tradition called Rumspringa. During late adolescence, young Amish people are given a period of time to experience life outside the community before making a formal decision about whether to be baptized into the church. They see the outside world. They try things. They make a choice. 85% of them choose to come back. That number is not the result of coercion or isolation. It is the result of a community that has made itself worth returning to, a place where the people around you will show up before you ask, where the land you work gets healthier every year instead of slowly wearing out, where dinner is eaten at a table with people who know you every night, without exception. The outside world can look very appealing in certain lights, but apparently, when you have actually experienced it, the barn in the morning, and the horses waiting, and the neighbors who come when you need them, that turns out to be pretty hard to give up. Section 6. The numbers that keep growing. Let us bring this back to the numbers, because that is where this whole thing started, and that is where it should end. Over 400,000 Amish people in 32 states right now, population doubling roughly every 20 years, new settlements forming at 1 every 10 days, 85% retention of young people, 1/3 of all American dairy farms, nearly 110,000 acres owned in Lancaster County alone, and all of it powered by horses. The equipment that makes modern agriculture possible costs a new entrant hundreds of thousands of dollars before the first seed goes in the ground. The equipment the Amish use costs a family around $24,000 total and $2,000 a year to keep running, and it never becomes obsolete because it does not run software. The soil on Amish farms is getting measurably better. The soil on many conventional farms is getting measurably worse. The community holding the Amish system together is expanding. The workforce supporting conventional American farming is aging and shrinking. When you add all of that up, a pattern starts to emerge that is hard to dismiss. The Amish are not an anachronism. They are not a curiosity. They are not a group of people stuck in a time that has passed them by. They are a group of people who made a decision about what matters most, built a system around that decision, stuck with it for 300 years, and kept refining it, and now that system is growing faster than almost any other community model in America. The rest of the country is having endless debates about the future of farming. Regenerative agriculture versus conventional, small farms versus industrial, organic versus commodity. The Amish are not in that debate. They never left the model that everyone else is now slowly trying to get back to. There is something worth sitting with in that. In a world that keeps measuring progress by how fast things move, how much ground you can cover before lunch, how many acres one person can manage with the right machine, the Amish figured out that the speed was never the point. The land was the point. The family was the point. The neighbor who shows up with a hammer before you have even finished asking for help. That was always the point. And while the rest of the agricultural world spent 70 years figuring out how to need fewer people, the Amish spent those same 70 years figuring out how to make people indispensable to each other. The horses are still in the barn. The soil is still getting better. And somewhere in Lancaster County right now, a family is looking at a piece of land in Montana and thinking about whether it is time to start a new settlement. The answer, almost certainly, is yes. If this completely changed the way you think about farming, efficiency, or community, go ahead and hit like. It takes 1 second and it genuinely helps more people find this video. Subscribe if you want to keep going down these kinds of rabbit holes with us. We cover stories that sound impossible but are completely real every single week. And I want to know what you think about this one. Here is the question I keep coming back to. If the Amish system is so clearly working, why is everyone else not paying more attention to it? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. There is another video on screen right now if you are not done yet.